Here we go, just going around the corner, and here we start over the pedestrian crossing, and this is the start of Westerley VR Race 2.6, the Chiltern Museum Open. It's quite common, I suppose, to put on the end of cycle races that it's an open event and not just restricted to club members or members of whatever organisation is putting it forward. So it is an open event, but actually this is named after the Chiltern Open Museum, which we will be going past later. So on the sightseeing culture side of this, the Chiltern Open Museum yet to come. But let's get into the race tactics for the Chiltern Museum Open. Now this starts and finishes with a descent, and we're about to drop down out of this village here, which is right on the very edge of London. As we drop down and go over the river at the bottom, we shall exit London. But this is Harefield in northwest London, and this is about where the hill starts. You'll have been gently declining ever so discreetly up until now, but now you can see we're starting to get some speed up, and this drops quite a lot. The camera's a little bit low. If the camera's a bit higher, you could see over the hedge, and you'd see that you can see for miles off here as we're dropping down into the River Colne Valley. So this really is, once you get going, you'll be into this big long descent as we go down towards the river. As you can see, it's well, it's going to be a lot smoother for you than it ever is for us, because there's a few potholes on here. It's quite challenging coming up, but it does have some little flat spots in the middle, like we're going through one now. So it's kind of stepped when you're coming up it, and obviously the same when you're going down. But the momentum when you're going down, you don't really feel the flats in quite the same way. So it's not a continual descent. There are these little flat steps that you get on the way down. Now this is, in the scheme of things, this is another 16 kilometre, 15.8 kilometre race that we're running here for Westerley VR, which is a normal distance. And in our experience, these hills and the descents can be very decisive. Now we're getting towards the bottom of this now. There's a few potholes just to slow us down when we're actually riding it, which is a good job, because just around this corner some traffic lights, and sometimes you get a queue of traffic there. So if you are going too fast, you can find yourself up the back of a car. Now we go through the traffic lights here. Now we're going to go over a canal and the river, starting here with the canal, I believe. And as we go around this, over that by the Koi Carp, and there's a little kayak centre below there, and then over the secondary river and back onto the flat. Now this is dead flat. We're at the bottom of the valley now. So once you've done that descent, you've got a very, very flat section going on for a little while, probably a kilometre or so, before we get to the climb back up into what I would call the Chilterns on the other side of the Colne Valley. So the Colne Valley sort of sneaks down to the west of London, in between the Chiltern Hills and London, and we're flat on the valley now, and we're just going to go along here. Very fast road this, in both directions. I mean, it's shielded from the wind with the hedges, so whichever direction you tend to ride on here, in real life you get a decent speed up. It's as I say, dead pan flat and not too windy either, so a nice little bit of road, shall we say, and we use it on our little escape routes out of London and into the countryside. You can see it's already countrified here. We're into Hertfordshire, shortly to come up to the Oaks and the main A412, which we will run parallel to for a little while on the old road, which I'll explain. As I say, it's all going to be flat until we do that little climb up back into the Chilterns. Now, these aren't the high Chilterns. The Chilterns that are closest to London are shallow compared to the ones sort of 20-30 miles out, which are much higher along the Chiltern Ridge and the Aylesbury Vale. So although we would class this as, or we're about to go into the Chilterns, people at the other end of the Chilterns might not, they might argue that it isn't the Chilterns, and certainly in modern day parlance people tend to describe the Chilterns as the Chiltern Hills further out of London. But this is not quite correct, because the Chilterns was an area of which the hills comprised a part. So what we now call the Chilterns, the hilly part, 20k out or 20 miles out, the hilly part is just the hilly part of what a wider area called the Chilterns was, which went all the way down to near Slough and up through High Wycombe and most of what we now know as the Chiltern Hills, but the Chiltern Hills weren't the only part of the Chiltern, they're just the hilly bits. So these softer hills that we're about to go up at this end of the Chilterns are the Chilterns, and testified by the fact that the Chiltern Open Air Museum is in fact in this neck of the woods, very close to London and the M25. So we are now running parallel. This is the old Uxbridge Road. This would have been the road from Watford to Uxbridge back in the day. We're actually running parallel to the modern road that's replaced it. In fact, two modern roads replaced it. The A412 just to our left, probably, in fact, we're going to join it in a minute, but it's probably only 50 metres to our left, the other side of those hedges. And the M25, which then replaced the A412 as the orbital road around London. So still flat here. This old road does actually merge with the new A4, well, I say the new A412. It's the A412 itself is an old road already replaced by the M25, but we are going to merge onto the A412 and go along that for a little while. As I say, this is just the Colne Valley, and it's going to be dead flat. So this is where, if you have got yourself into a decent breakaway from the descent out of Harefield down to the Colne Valley, here we are. This is the A412. So as I say, you can see it's dead flat, and if you go straight across, you start rising, and that goes up into the hill, Chiltern Ridge, and what is the start of the Chiltern. So we just do a little bit further along here, a little bit more flat, only a few hundred metres, then we're going to do a left, and the climbing will begin. Now this is a steady way up into the Chilterns here. It's not anything too demanding, it's not steep, but it is gradual, and it will cover a couple of kilometres, well, a kilometre or so, I would guess, of your ride. There's going to be some slightly undulating bits at the top, and you go along through the sort of Chalfont area, which we've done in other races, which is I'd say, once you're up onto that Chiltern ascent, and when you're up that Chiltern ascent, it's fairly flat at the top in this sort of area. It's just when you drop down into these valleys, like the Misbourne or the Colne. So coming up here to Maple Cross, where we're going to turn left and start the climbing. Not immediately, but well, I suppose there is a slight rise as we turn into the rise. So make the most of this, because you've got to break out of that descent, and you can keep that going on this flat bit. Now this is where any group you're in may or may not fragment, and it won't fragment immediately, because, as I say, as you can see, we're gently going uphill as we go into this sort of Chiltern area. But it's not steep, it's never steep on here. And in fact, there's a couple of dips before we actually make the main ascent up towards the Chalfont Open Museum. So it's attritional. I don't think people will drop off straight away on this climb. You can certainly attack here and split the pack, as long as you don't burn yourself out. But you can see this sort of gentle climb up here. As I say, it doesn't go on too long. When we go into these trees, it goes on a little bit longer, then it dips down again. We're going to go under the motorway, the M25, but then a climb again. So slightly undulating, but overall it's a climb. And as I say, decent place to attack. You can split the group, but you won't lose your main competitors, I would say. So strategically, if you think you're not going to win the bunch sprint, it's probably not a bad place to attack and lose some people. But beyond that, if you fancy your chances in the sprint, you probably keep your powder dry and save it a little while. So say that's the first little bit of the rise. It does dip down again before we go up again, as you can see where that car's going. So we go into a little bit of a dip here, and then we go under the motorway and then rise again. I'm not 100% sure whether this road dips down to get under the motorway. I don't think so, but it's probably a natural dip. So we're right, well, we're not quite in London, but we're just outside London. It always amazes me that you actually see wild deer along this road. Well, I say you see them, you don't see them every time you ride, but more than once I've seen wild deer around here, and quite close to London, which always surprises me. So as I say, that's the it's a very gentle dip here, as I say, before we rise again. You can see on the left the land rising, that's what we're going to go up, and that's up onto the Chiltern. So it's not too high. You're not going to sort of kill yourself going up it, but in racing conditions, if you fancy splitting the group you're in, probably not a bad place to attack. So here we go, under the M25, which is the motorway that circles London. It's a big donut-shaped circle, and here we go. It replaced the A412, which we just crossed. And again, we'll rise out of here. It'll rise, dip, and then the main rise starts. As I say, it's not going to kill you, but the undulations are strategically good places to attack. And I would recommend that you look at the Ride with GPS profile that we do provide. We give you a web link. If you look on one of the Facebook pages, on the RGT groups, RGT events, for example, you'll find that we do put up links. Or if you go to westerley.cc, remember Westerley spelled L-E-Y at the end, not L-Y, westerley.cc, and there are links. There's a tab there with all our virtual racing details. And if you look at the Series 2 lineup, there are links to have a look at the Ride with GPS profile. I would have a look at this because I think this this section of the ride is where you're going to, I think, start splitting the groups. As I say, you won't lose your main competitors, but you can see we're descending again here, and then we're going to do a sharp right, and that's where we properly climb up. But then we have been gaining more height than losing. So here we go, and this is the gentle climb. As you can see, not steep, but not short either. As I say, strategists amongst you, you all know your strengths, so play to them. But if you can, this is probably the key point to shed people from your group. This bit of the hill here, this main climb. As I say, it's been climbing for a while, but there have been little dips before it. After this, we do get to that top of that, what I call the sort of lower end of the Chilterns, because they're much the hills are much smaller at this end than they are at the Aylesbury end of the Chilterns, and going up to Luton and places like that, Dunstable rather, they do get much higher and steeper. So you can see this is going on for a little while. You know, people might not be able to stick with you all the way if you can hold it. Keep going, keep going. As I say, you all know your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe it's just time to hang on and do a bit of drafting here and hope that you can stay with it. Because if you get over this in the leading pack, you're in with a very, very good chance. Because after that, it's along the top, and then we do a big downhill all the way to Denham and back to the A412 in a different place. But it's a downhill stroke flat finish, as we've done before. So big downhill, and then probably sort of 3/4 of a kilometre or something like that, of flat to the finishing line. As you can see, we're still climbing here. It's been going on a little while. If you can hang on, or if in fact you can accelerate, this is a key point of the race. Just don't underestimate this. We all know what RGT is like. If you get dropped from a group, you are in a spot of bother. Now, as we come up here, we're heading towards Chalfont. In fact, we've done previous races around the Chalfont area. There's several villages called Chalfont, of which we're not particularly going to visit most of the famous ones today. We're only really going to hit Chalfont Common. But just up here on our right shortly is the Chiltern Open Air Museum. And essentially what it is a museum where they've got old historic buildings, dwellings that ordinary people would have lived in, and reconstructed them in an open air museum, so you can visit historic, as I say, buildings. Not, I mean, these would have been sort of farm workers sort of type dwellings. I haven't been in there for a long time, so I can't give you full detail, but it's been there for a few decades now, and I went when it first opened, so I'm sure it's vastly improved since I ever went there. But as I say, you can go and see what ancient farmers did in the Chiltern area in days gone by. And illuminating, I'm sure it is. The fact that it's still there suggests it's got something going for it. We're beginning to level out now as we head up towards the museum. There's a couple of little farm shops and things like that along here before we hit the museum. The museum's on our right in the fields to our right. As I say, I'm not sure how many how much land it occupies, but it's quite a big space, and as I say, it's it's all about buildings and showing what farmers' lives were like in the past. You see, very flat now. We're going along towards Chalfont Common. Not a lot to say, but as I say, once you've got up the side of the Colne Valley onto the Chilterns, those few, just remember it's those few little dips, rises and dips. Generally rising, the dips aren't as, descending as much as you've ascended, but overall you are climbing, and then that big long climb up to this area. Now you can see the speed already picking up here as we go past the farm shops, selling their produce and other various things. I never actually stopped to see what they sell, thinking about it, but I think there's probably sort of plants and other farm produce. As I say, we're coming up to the Chiltern Open Air Museum on our right pretty soon. After that, we shall be hanging left along Chalfont Common and down into Denham by Denham Golf Club. Denham Golf Club always struck me as a funny place. Here we are. This is the Chiltern Open Air Museum here. That's the entrance coming up right there. So if you want to visit it, that's what you're looking for. And I'm sure it's a very, very good day out, but pick a dry, sunny day because it is outdoors. As I say, we're heading now towards Chalfont Common. We are going to hang a left at some point and go along towards Denham, along Denham Lane. And it's, as I say, this is going to be fairly flat, and you're going to have good speed. So again, in groups, if you're already in a group, this is going to be good for you. As I say, the decisive moment will be the ascents that we've already done, and this is all going to be about just sitting with the group and making sure you're in there and up for it at the end. We all seem to descend slightly differently. There is a risk that you could lose out in the descent, but maybe you can't. So this is the left, and this again is going to be pretty flat. In fact, I say that, but it's very deeply flooded the other day when we were riding down it, and sort of water up to the almost up to the bottom bracket, but not quite. So it must have little dips in it, but I think I think where it was flooded, actually, there's some sort of drainage problem. So it was not a natural sort of flooding area. There seems to be some sort of works by it. Again, you can see it's just deadpan flat, more or less. So as I say, this is the race is now sort of past the first key point. The second key point will be the descent, and the third key point will just be how well you do in the sprint finish as we hurtle along towards Denham. Now, we're going down, if you know the area at all, or if you ever travel on the train line between Marylebone and Birmingham, you will know that there's a station called Denham Golf Club. And Denham Golf Club is not a station. This is where it floods, and you can see these little tanks on the right, and you can see the puddle on the left. I think there's something to do with what they're doing in that in the works that causes that flood, because there's no natural reason for there to be a flood. But that was very, very deep recently. This was filmed a few weeks ago, so before it flooded. But as you can see, it's not a natural dip. It must be something to do with that works. So as I say, going back to Denham Golf Club, which is the descent we're going to do. So if you know the climb by Denham Golf Club, there's a railway station called Denham Golf Club. And I always used to wonder why a golf club had a railway station, because I couldn't imagine all the golfers going to play golf by train. It's the sort of thing where you chuck the bag in the back of the car and drive to the golf club, surely. But of course I have realised in later life that there's two Denham stations, and it's just explaining that this is the one near the golf club rather than the one at Denham Green. So here we are, Chalfont Common. This is, as I say, a fairly fast road. On the left there is one of the, there's a bike jumble twice a year there. Absolutely marvellous. Bikes from the 1800s and bike parts for people who make their own bikes up and things like that for sale. So it happens twice a year. Didn't happen in 2020 because of COVID, but absolutely marvellous. So if you ever see the Denham Bike Jungle, sorry, the Chalfont Bike Jumble advertised, well worth a visit. Twice a year. It's usually in April, beginning of April and the beginning of November. But whether or not 2021 gives us the Bike Jungle, I don't know. The I say jumble. There are, I think it's the second biggest one. I'm told there's quite a big one at the Manchester Velodrome as well, but I don't know for sure. And certainly it is big when they have it in. It's just on the left down this road, Chalfont Common. So nothing particularly to report still on the road. It's fast, furious and flat. Remember, 15.8, 16 kilometres is how we run the Westerleigh VR races. This is 2.6, so halfway through Series 2. And the regular riders, I'm pretty sure, do strategise, watch these videos, and they certainly look at the ride with GPS profiles that we provide. And so you can get those by looking at the Westerleigh CC website. Remember, Westerleigh spelled L-E-Y at the end. Or if you go on RGT user events on Facebook, you will see that we put up links from time to time to ensure that everybody can have a good look at the course and strategise. So reiterating, we've gone over the key parts. I suppose there's the descent out of Harefield, flat along the Colne Valley, then that gradual rise, a couple of dips just before the main rise up onto the Chilterns here, and we're at the top now of, I say we're at the top of the Chilterns. This is the low end of the Chilterns, but we're on the sort of kind of highland for this end of the Chilterns, and it's just going to be flat because we're on the top of this sort of plateau, riding along here all the way to Denham. I suppose there are a couple of minor dips just around the M25 as we go back into the woods before the golf club, but they are not serious and they're not going to affect anybody in RGT. Are reasonably smooth, these things, so they're not you don't get silly ramps or anything like that, so you're not going to notice any more of the hills. It's just going to be this continual flat, making sure you're in the pack and not getting caught out by any breaks, not falling asleep so you don't drop off the back and then can't find your way back onto your group. Just stay, see how well you do on the descent, and then it's all about the sprint finish. So here we are, well into Chalfont Common now, and this is the top of the ridge. On our right is the Misbourne Valley, so all these roads to the right drop down a steep hill into a valley, but we're still up here on the ridge, and we're going to stay so, as I say, till we get to the descent at Denham Golf Club. So there's not a lot strategically I can add. We haven't got much in the way of tourist attractions between here and now. I mean, the odd dairy and a scout camp, but I don't think that that's quite what you'd expect to see in a tourist guidebook. Nothing of any particular note. This is one of our favourite little routes out of London. When we come the other way more often than this way, I would suggest, where we climb up from Denham Golf Club and use this road as an outlet out towards the higher Chilterns at the other end of them. In fact, the Chilterns sweep down in a sort of, I suppose, from the northeast towards the southwest at a 45-degree angle, from roughly Dunstable, north of London, down to almost Reading, to the west of London. And as I say, the ridge is much higher at the other side of it. So it's a long ridge that goes all the way from Dunstable down to Berkshire on the far side, and then on the London side, these lower slopes that build up to it. So masses of hills. If you look on Westerleigh CC website, you'll find that there's a Chiltern Hills interactive map you can use, and there's something like 300 climbs that you can look at. Now, I mean, when I say climbs, some of these are very short little climbs, but it's not everyone is exactly long enough to, I suppose, run a TT hill climb on. But there are something like 300 plus slopes identified on our interactive site on the Westerleigh CC website, and they're not all there. There are some I haven't put on yet. So as I say, it will grow. I don't think I'll ever get up to 400, but certainly there's quite a few more to add in yet, and with 300 on there already. Go and have a look. That's westerleigh.cc, the Westerleigh Cycling Club website. Meanwhile, as we carry on towards Denham Golf Club along this fast, flat plateau, not a lot to report. As I say, apart from the fact there's a dairy and a scout camp along this road, a few farms, a few nice houses. It is pretty much standard fare British country road, and a few cracks in it as well, just to make it authentically British, so that your bike jumps about a little bit. Great that they have a Steadicam on the GoPros these days, so you don't notice the bumps quite as much. So we're gradually heading now towards the M25. When we go under the M25, I say there's a couple of small undulations that you won't notice on RGT before the road swings left and we do that fast descent down through Denham Golf Club past the railway station, and then shortly after the railway station we hang a left and there's this flat sprint all the way to the finish. This is where you need to sort of, I suppose, keep your eye out, because the interesting thing will be where people start sprints from. I'd say go and have a look at the profile, because the descent is not too far from the end, and there's probably half a kilometre, maybe 3/4 kilometre from the bottom of the hill to the finishing line. If people have got the momentum off that hill and somebody goes for it, it is just about possible to get a breakaway. So here we are coming back under the M25, so we're heading back towards London now. The M25, as I say, is a ring around London, so once you're the other side of it, you're out of London, or as we are coming back into the London side of it. So although this doesn't technically take us into London, we're inside the M25, which is kind of more or less the de facto sort of boundary for what people class as London, I suppose, in the broadest sense. So we're still in Buckinghamshire, but as I say, just by the border with Greater London. Now we get into this wooded area, so there's a couple of small undulations, but you won't really notice them, I don't think, on an RGT race, certainly once you've got a bit of power and you're in a pack. But it's, I suppose it's, I suppose you might just notice them that little bit. I mean, if you're caught out just when you get to one and you're in the wrong gear and you find yourself 10 metres off the back, you've always got to waste a lot of energy getting back on. And this is one of the things that a lot of people tell me about on these RGT races, that one moment sort of kind of looking at the emails on the phone or something like that, and they're 10 metres off the back, and the effort getting back on is quite intense. Now you can see the bike's sped up a little bit here. That's because I'm sort of going down one of those small undulations. I mean, it feels like the start of the descent, but it's not. Okay, so if there is one little bit where you see a sort of small decline registering, it's not the beginning of the descent. There's a kind of small undulating version of it before you get to the proper descent, and it will go up a little bit just before we get there. So again, there's not a lot to report, and as you can see, it started raining, so there's some raindrops on the on the lens, unfortunately, which doesn't even give you the best view of the autumn leaves falling across the South Buckinghamshire roads, but I think you get the gist of what's going on all the same. Say slightly faster here, but that's as I say, it's one of those false flat things, although you're going the right way down it, because we're going down it rather than up it just now. But this is not the main descent. Although again, I suppose even if this small descent does register on RGT, it's going to sort of give you that momentum before the descent, which is going to be a factor. I think the descent is going to be a factor. I mean, I've certainly watched groups split on RGT quite a few times on descents, and quite whether that's some sort of functionality of the program, or it's the way people use the descents, I'm not entirely sure. But I mean, I've certainly not held my position on a descent, and on other occasions I have, but I'm not clearly conscious of what I do to win or lose on those things. But I've certainly seen groups split. I think some people just must really use them to their advantage and power down them. As you can see, it's sort of quite good, quite a decent speed down here. I mean, the only thing that ever stops us in real life is cars coming the other way, because you can see it's not quite wide enough for two vehicles, but wide enough for a bike. But with the mess at the bottom, or the side of the road, at the bottom of the ditch there, tend to ride in the middle of the road just to avoid all the muck and everything else like that. With the water does tend to roll off the fields and into the road on this part of road. Right, so we are just probably about going down the proper descent now, I think, and we certainly seem to be gathering a little bit of speed here. As I say, it's when you're coming up it, there's only one bit that sort of kind of feels like a proper climb, and then you get to the top, and I mean, it carries on going up a little bit, but it's as I say, what we might call a false flat. So we're, as I say, heading for the proper descent shortly. The blobs on the lens don't particularly help here, because I can't quite work out where we are. Not that I'm an expert and I can recognise one set of hedges from another, but I do ride this road frequently enough to consider myself knowledgeable of what it looks like when I can see through the lens. Right, so here we are. This is the bottom of the descent under the railway bridge, and there's a little bit more of the descent to go, and yeah, there's a left-hand bend which I think marks the end of the descent. As I say, it's a bit difficult to see through the water here. Right, it's coming up soon, and if only I could see where we're going. It's shortly after these houses. Right, the left-hand bend now is the start of the flat bit. Okay, so that's it. That's the race into the sprint now. I would say probably 500, maybe 700 meters from that bend to the finish along the flat. Generally in real life you can get decent speed along here. It's, let's say once again, a road with hedges. Prevailing winds tend to be southwesterly, and we're heading easterly, so you quite often have a wind behind you in real life here. It's obviously not going to help you much on RGT, but you are now racing for the line, and you're watching for people who are going to go early. You're going to have to counter those people, or somebody's going to have to. Now, actually, what happens on your screens, you'll see the you'll see a set of traffic lights at the end. Although I think they might not be working when I did this, because they only work Monday to Fridays for the busy periods. They're switched off at the weekends. But basically, we come to a T-junction, which is the A412, which is the old orbital road around London before they built M25, and that will be our finishing line. So we're edging ever towards it. As I say, I can't quite see because of the blob of water in the middle of the lens, but we must be getting reasonably close by now, and that will be your finishing line. So let's say look at the profile, because you can work it out for yourself what the distances are from via the GPS, the links via Westerley CC. Here we are coming up to the end, I think that's right, and the bollards where that car's parked is your finishing line. Good luck, hope you do well. Bye.